What if our ancestors weren't simply hunters and gatherers evolving slowly over millions of years? What if we were a purpose-built species, engineered for a specific function, designed not by nature but by something far more advanced, something not of this earth? Across ancient texts and sacred inscriptions, from Sumer to Egypt, from India to the Americas, a single name echoes through time: the Anunnaki. Beings described not as spirits or mythological deities, but as real, tangible entities. Gods, or something else entirely? And then there's their lost world, Nibiru, the place from which they came. Some believe it's still out there, orbiting in the distant edges of our solar system. Others fear it's coming back. Welcome to Numen Arcanis, a place where forgotten truths are unearthed and ancient mysteries finally find their voice. If you're new here, welcome. And to all returning seekers, thank you for walking this path with us. Today, we dive into one of the oldest and most controversial stories in all of human history: the cradle of civilization. Before the pyramids rose from the desert sands, before Stonehenge stood in silent circles, even before wheels turned on clay roads, there was Sumer, the world's first great civilization. Emerging in Mesopotamia around 4000 BCE, the Sumerians gave humanity writing, agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, the wheel, and organized city-states. It was as if they appeared suddenly, fully formed, without a clear evolutionary or historical buildup. Historians still puzzle over how such a civilization emerged seemingly out of nowhere. But the Sumerians themselves didn't claim they invented these things. According to their own records, written in cuneiform on clay tablets, they were taught by powerful beings they called the Anunnaki. These weren't gods in the spiritual sense. They were described as physical beings, mighty, commanding, and entirely real. And according to the Sumerians, the Anunnaki came to Earth with a mission, not to guide or teach humanity, but to mine one very specific resource: gold. Why gold? For most of human history, gold had little practical value. It was shiny and beautiful, used for decoration or status, but not essential to survival. So why was it considered so sacred and important across nearly every ancient culture? The Sumerians claimed that gold was everything to the Anunnaki. Their home planet, Nibiru, was dying. Its atmosphere was breaking down, and only microscopic particles of suspended gold, scattered into the upper atmosphere, could reflect solar radiation and preserve life on their world. Earth, rich with gold deposits, became their salvation. So, around 450,000 years ago, the Anunnaki came to Earth. Not as gods, not as saviors, but as resource extractors, desperate to save their own world. Their mission was never about us. It was about them. Planet Nibiru. Myth or reality? According to ancient records, Nibiru followed an elliptical orbit that took 3,600 years to complete a cycle around the Sun. It wasn't a stable neighbor like Earth or Mars. It was a wandering planet, a cosmic intruder that would periodically approach the inner solar system, bringing with it disruption, destruction, and possibly contact. For centuries, modern science dismissed the idea of such a planet. But that changed in 2015 when astronomers at Caltech found evidence of a massive, unseen object influencing the orbits of distant solar system bodies. They called it Planet 9. It was massive, it was cold, and it was hidden, exactly how the ancients described Nibiru. If Nibiru is real, and if it's on its return path, what happens when it comes close again? The creation of mankind. In the early days, the Anunnaki did their own labor. Later, they brought another alien species, the Igigi, to work as miners. But after 150,000 years of relentless toil, the Igigi rebelled. The uprising nearly collapsed the entire operation. Desperate, the Anunnaki turned to Earth's native beings, early hominids. These creatures had potential, but they were too primitive for the complex work required. So the Anunnaki did something unprecedented. They genetically engineered a new species by combining their DNA with that of early humans. The result was a hybrid, us. This wasn't evolution, it was engineering. The first human, called Adamu, was created as a laborer, a tool. Intelligent enough to take orders, strong enough to work, but limited enough not to rebel. You've heard the name before: Adam in the Bible, the clay man of Egypt, or the earthborn humans of Mesopotamia. Across cultures, the story is the same: mankind as a fusion of divine essence and earthly matter. The limits of control. The Anunnaki thought they had created the perfect servant, but over time something changed. Some say an Anunnaki goddess, Ninhursag, grew compassionate and upgraded the humans. Others say the Anunnaki began to interbreed with their creation. Regardless of the cause, humans grew smarter. They developed language, tools, and ambition. With ambition came defiance. We began to question, to organize, to fight. Our numbers grew, cities formed, and control started slipping from the Anunnaki's grasp. The Great Flood, a reset. Then came the tipping point. As the Anunnaki watched humanity spiral into chaos, conflicts, overpopulation, disorder, they prepared for a final solution. At the same time, Nibiru once again neared Earth. Its approach threatened environmental upheaval, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, polar shifts. Rather than stop it, the Anunnaki allowed the destruction to happen. This was the Great Flood. It's remembered in nearly every culture: the Epic of Gilgamesh, Noah's Ark, the Hindu flood of Manu, the Mesoamerican deluge myths. But in the Sumerian version, the flood wasn't divine wrath. It was a calculated decision. Only a chosen few were warned. One man, Utnapishtim, was instructed to build an ark and preserve life. He survived, so did his knowledge. And from those survivors, humanity would begin again. Aftermath: the new humanity. After the flood, the Anunnaki returned. But this time they introduced limits. Our lifespans were shortened. Childbirth was made more difficult. Our immune systems were weakened. We were still their creation, but a more controlled version. And so began a second wave of human civilization. Cities rose once more. Agriculture spread. Writing, architecture, astronomy, these weren't rediscoveries. They were reintroductions, brought back by the Anunnaki as tools for managing the population. The gods had returned, not as rulers, but as teachers and guides. Some believe they helped construct the great monuments of antiquity: the Egyptian pyramids, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the aligned stone structures whose precision still baffles modern engineers. The bloodlines of gods. But the Anunnaki didn't all leave. Some remained, and some bred with humans. These hybrids became the demigods, beings of legend and myth. Gilgamesh, the Sumerian hero, was 2/3 divine. Hercules, the Greek warrior, was the son of Zeus. Samson, in the Hebrew tradition, drew supernatural strength from his divine origin. Not all unions were noble. When humans and the Igigi interbred, they created giants, the Nephilim. These monstrous beings appear in many traditions: the Rephaim, the Anakim, the Titans. They were feared for their cruelty and strength. Some scholars even suggest that certain royal bloodlines claim descent from these hybrids, and that fragments of divine DNA still circulate in elite families and secret societies. Evidence in the modern age. Mainstream science rejects the Anunnaki theory as pseudoscience. It's dismissed as myth, conspiracy, or science fiction. But the deeper you look, the harder it is to ignore the clues scattered across the ancient world. Take the skulls with elongated craniums, discovered in places like Peru and Egypt. Scientists often explain them as intentional deformation caused by binding a child's head during infancy. But some of these skulls are different. They don't show the same compression patterns. Their cranial capacity is larger, the sutures are unusual, and in some cases, the DNA doesn't match anything local. Why would people all over the globe, even those with no contact, try to mimic the same strange head shape? Then there's the mysterious genetic code within us. The TKTL1 gene, also known as ARHGAP11B, controls neocortex expansion, the part of the brain responsible for language, abstract thinking, and problem solving. It's not just rare, it's exclusive. No other primate has it. Scientists acknowledge this gene seems to appear suddenly, as if switched on at some point in human evolution. They don't know where it came from. Could it have been inserted? Could that single tiny mutation have been the moment we became human? The moment we were gifted or altered by something beyond Earth? And what about the planet Nibiru? According to ancient Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki hailed from a wandering world on a long elliptical orbit, returning to Earth roughly every 3,600 years. Modern astronomers scoff at this, yet the hunt for Planet 9 continues. There's gravitational evidence suggesting a massive, unseen object lurking at the edge of our solar system, disrupting the orbits of distant bodies. Something is there. We just haven't seen it yet. Could that something be Nibiru? If Nibiru is real, and if its orbit is true, it could return around the year 2900. That sounds like science fiction, until you realize how quickly new discoveries are changing what we think we know. The James Webb Telescope, deep space probes, and AI-enhanced data models are already rewriting cosmology. Every year, the unknown edges closer to known. So what happens if the Anunnaki do return? Will it be a peaceful reunion with our creators, or a reckoning with our ancient overlords? Or have they never actually left? Here's the strange part. Cultures across the world, Sumer, Egypt, India, Mesoamerica, share eerily similar myths. Sky beings, flying discs, golden gods, floods sent to cleanse disobedient creations, hybrid offspring born of human women and celestial fathers. These aren't just stories, they're patterns, and patterns usually mean something. Maybe it's not myth, maybe it's memory, a forgotten truth hidden behind religion, buried under centuries of denial and distraction. A truth that tells us we were engineered, not evolved. If that thought shakes your foundation even a little, then let curiosity do the rest, like this video. Share it with other seekers. Subscribe to Numen Arcanis, where history isn't dead, it's waiting to be remembered. And until we meet again, keep your mind open and never stop asking, who built us?